I've caught up with James here, lead designer on Total War Shogun 2 at the Intel booth here at GDC, and I guess it's interesting for you to see people get their hands on the game now. You released the demo, is that right? And starting to see what people's reactions are to this new chapter of the Total War franchise.
Yeah, it's always really interesting to see how new players take to the game. You know, we've spent an awful lot of time trying to make Shogun 2, you know, deeper and at the same time more accessible to players that haven't necessarily played a Total War game before. And that has a number of different threads. You know, we're really trying to make sure that the game is immersive. You know, really makes everything that you do make you feel like a Japanese warlord. You know, in the 16th century Japan. And it's great just to see people pick it up and get enthused about, you know, playing the battles and just the look of the battlefields, the look of the campaign map. It's kind of it's really quite fresh, I think, and graphically impressive. And you know, we're really proud of how the game plays as well.
Would you say that a game like Shogun 2 is an easier starting point than, say, something like Empire in terms of like how huge the campaign is or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, you know, Empire represented, you know, Total War series reaching out to its greatest geographical extent, right? Because we were representing 18th century, you know, European colonization, all that kind of stuff. We had to almost represent, you know, well, we had to represent most of the world, right? And so, what was really fresh about Shogun is we were able to effectively concentrate on one relatively small island space, okay, but the gameplay depth and the detail with which we've been able to focus it allows us to have a deeper gameplay experience, and it's still epic in feel, but you get a deeper experience of the culture. It's easier to, you know, immerse the player in a single culture, because we can explore it in a great deal of depth, rather than having to represent, you know, lots of different cultures like India and North America and you know, the whole of Europe. So it allows us to, I think, you know, help the player get immersed. You know, we're able to have a single kind of really strong look for things like the user interface. You know, having a traditional like Japanese artwork look for the whole game.
I understand this has been sort of a project that the team has been wanting to do for a long time. Could you talk us through a little bit about the journey of developing this game?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when we polled the team after finishing off Napoleon about what we really wanted to work on, and you know, Shogun 2 was definitely the #1 choice in the development team. I think, you know, Shogun was about 10 years ago now, the original Total War game, and you know, we wanted to go back to it for some of the reasons that we did it in the first place. You know, in many ways, Shogun 2 is set in the ideal period for a Total War game, right? You've got lots of different clans vying for control of a great prize, which is to become Shogun Master of Japan. You've also got, you know, interesting technological changes. So, you know, the 16th century saw the sort of first introduction of firearms into Japanese armies on a large scale. So, you know, it was really a natural choice. We also wanted to move away from the European theatre and actually do something different, and go and do, you know, great samurai armies, great content with you know, different types of characters, ninjas, geishas. You know, it's a really exciting period for us, and we felt in many ways that we, because of the way that technology's moved on and our engines developed over the 10 years, you know, we almost felt we hadn't done it, you know, because with Shogun, the original Shogun, you know, we had a 2D campaign map. You know, it was you know, even the battlefield, even the characters on the battlefield weren't fully 3D. So we really wanted to, you know, represent these great clashes between samurai armies in all its glory, you know. And so we felt we hadn't done that before.
So you mentioned the firearms, and that sort of poses an interesting strategic question for the players. Could you go through a little bit about that and what that means to sort of choosing to go with firearms or not?
Well, you know, there are several different dilemmas going on. So on the campaign map, you know, you can choose if you want to embrace Christianity, because the European first European traders came to, well, not necessarily traders, but the first Europeans came to Japan around the middle of the 16th century when the game's set. And that you know, the adoption of Christianity, and some daimyos did adopt Christianity, introduces some interesting, you know, problems and dynamics in the gameplay on the campaign map. So, you know, it introduces all sorts of well, we have a religious system that can create all sorts of problems for the player and different ways of playing the game. You know, you've got different kinds of agents, so you can get Christian missionaries or you can have Buddhist monks, and you know, all of those dynamics, you know, help you manage the transition to Christianity, and that helps introduce gunpowder weapons more effectively into your armies. But you can, if you want, spend a lot of time researching them yourself. It's really a matter of choice, but that might mean that you can't necessarily get the best archers. But on the battlefield, you know, gunpowder weapons, although they were highly effective, were not necessarily the devastating weapons that you might think of, you know, from thinking about gunpowder weapons from hundreds of years later. You know, muskets were very, very short-ranged. They took a long time to reload. They were completely ruined if it was raining. The main reason why they were effective is that you could just give them to anybody, right? An archer, in order to be effective, had to be a well-trained samurai, whereas, you know, you could give anybody a musket and they could be lethal. So that's the main difference.
So is that represented in the game that if you equip your soldiers with muskets, they will be more effective even if they're not leveled up all the way? Or
well, yeah, I mean, in a way, what that means is that, you know, the gunpowder units might be quite cheap and cheap to recruit and maintain, but not necessarily as effective as archers. But archers might be more expensive, and you know, so there's various different ways we can represent that. But what's interesting about Shogun 2, I think, is that we've tried to make sure there's some real interesting gameplay depth in terms of the way that you can develop your armies and improve their skills and abilities. You know, you won't be able to go through the whole tech tree and get everything, right? You've really got to choose whether you want to focus on having great cavalry, or whether you want to choose to emphasize archery, or even whether you want to choose to improve the armor or defenses of a unit, or whether you want to improve its morale or attack. There's lots of different interesting choices there, and I think we've really pushed that angle more than we have in previous Total War games. And similarly with characters, right? So we have a new kind of RPG element for all the different characters on the map. So generals and you know, all the agents like ninjas and geishas, metsuke, you know, and monks. They all have a kind of skill tree, so as you gain experience, you can choose to develop them in certain different ways. And I think that's one of the elements that we're quite proud of, and has really made a difference to the way that the gameplay works on the campaign map, in that each of those different characters can do different things to different pieces on the map, right? So, for instance, you might have a monk that can not only, you know, convert regions' religion. They can also demoralize enemy armies. They can also inspire your own armies. They can also convert other characters. So you tend to find, as we've been playing the game, you know, that actually when you bring an invasion force through a valley or whatever, right, or when you see an enemy army approaching you, you tend to want to have these different agents around to do different things. You know, if an army's more powerful, you might want to use a ninja to sabotage that army so it can't move while you bring in some reinforcements. Or you might find that if you've got a general that is, you know, doesn't necessarily have great morale for his troops, you know, you might want to bring a monk into the army to help inspire it. So there's, you know, and also there are enemy agents, of course, that have their own effects, and you've got to counter them with your own agents. So there's, you know, in many ways, there's some really interesting gameplay that wasn't there so strongly in previous Total War games, and we're really pleased about that.
It seems like perhaps the fact that there's a smaller region and more distinct factions, that there allows you to sort of tailor it more and broaden that experience in between each faction.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've really spent the time focusing on honing the gameplay, you know, and the fact that we've been able to focus on a smaller geographical area means that we can portray each region in more detail. You know, we've really focused on trying to make the game, you know, have a great replay value, right? So you've got lots of different clans that you can play as. Each of them has their own unique set of strengths and weaknesses, different position on the map, which in this game really makes a difference, because you've got different regions with different specialities. So, you know, some regions might have a strong philosophical tradition, which can really improve the rate at which you master art. So effectively, it's kind of like researching technology. You might have other regions which have, you know, master armorers, which can improve the armor score of units built there. You might have, you've also got different resources, right? So you might have regions where you can get access to tall timber, which can really improve your ability to build ships. So we've tried to make the way that you conquer your territory. You know, each region has its own special effect on your empire, and that really makes for some great replay value. You know, we've played the game lots and lots and lots, and every time really is different. And there's lots of different ways to develop and to explore the game. And I think that's one of the things we're really proud of, and that's much more developed than in previous games.
I've done interviews on Total War Shogun 2 before, and I have to ask this question. Have you ever been the Shogun of the office at any point?
The Shogun of the office?
Leading the Shogun Leaderboard?
No, not me. No, I've never been able to beat some of the guys, especially in the QA department. You know, they're playing the game, really trying their hardest to break it and really push the boundaries. Really trying to max out on every little thing that they can find, and you know, we have to keep responding to that and perfecting the game. So no. Personally, I haven't been the top multiplayer expert myself.
So, have you wrapped up development yet, or and sort of where do you see the Total War series moving in the future?
Well, effectively, we're wrapped up. We're releasing 15th of March, so we're really excited to see the reception from Shogun 2, because we're really confident that players will really like it, and we hope that players will have a hell of a lot of fun playing it. And we just can't wait for the reception. You know, we're all glued to our screens, looking at the forums all the time. You know, about regarding the demo, but also we're going to be particularly excited when the full game hits the streets to see how people react. And we're obviously going to we keep working on Shogun 2. You know, after development, you know, there's always going to be updates and improvements to make. And we're particularly excited about, you know, how the new about seeing the new multiplayer system, working, and really looking forward to seeing how players take to that. And because that's a new thing for us, to really be pushing that with a persistent kind of career mode, and that's definitely a direction that we want to keep pushing for the series in future. But you know, we've got loads of different options for future Total War projects. So yeah, we'll see. We've got a bunch of different options, and we're excited about all of them.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.